You never really expect an ordinary Tuesday evening to shift the very ground beneath your feet. I was simply unwinding, letting the rhythm of the day fade away, when the front door opened and changed everything. My home, usually a fortress of quiet solitude, was suddenly filled with a different kind of energy, a static charge that was both startling and strangely awakening. What followed wasn't a grand event, but a series of small, unplanned moments that peeled back a layer of myself I thought had long since settled into the dust of the past. But before we dive into the story, please take a second to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and let us know in the comments which city you're listening from. It truly means the world to us. And now, sit back and enjoy. I was humming a jazz standard, enjoying the solitude of a long, hot soak in the tub. The aroma of lavender and steam filled the small bathroom, creating a barrier against the gray, blustery world outside. The window was cracked just a hair, allowing the sound of the wind in the oaks to mix with the splashing water. I felt entirely suspended in time, blissfully ignorant that my sanctuary was about to be breached. Robert, my husband of nearly 5 years, had mentioned that his fishing buddies, Arthur and Silas, might stop by to drop off some tackle before their weekend trip. In my mind, stopping by meant a handshake on the porch or a quick exchange in the hallway. I hadn't calculated that their arrival would align perfectly with my moment of vulnerability. The heavy thud of boots in the hallway made me jump. My heart hammered against my ribs as I heard deep voices echoing off the hardwood floors, far closer than I anticipated. "Robert." I called out, my voice bouncing off the tiled walls, sounding smaller than I intended. "Is that you, Elena?" Arthur's voice boomed through the door, a rich, baritone sound I'd known for decades, though usually from a polite distance. We didn't mean to intrude, the front door was unlocked. I froze, sinking lower into the bubbles, a flush of heat rising to my face that had nothing to do with the water temperature. There was an instinctive urge to shout for them to leave, to retreat into modesty. But alongside the embarrassment, a strange spark of curiosity flickered to life. It was the thrill of being caught off guard, of the barrier between private and public suddenly dissolving. I'm in the bath," I managed to say, my voice steadying. "We're just leaving the gear in the hall," Silas added. His voice was softer, raspy, and thoughtful. Robert appeared a moment later, knocking gently before leaning near the doorframe, not entering but letting his presence bridge the gap. "Sorry, Elle. They wanted to show me the new reels. I didn't realize you were still in here." I could hear the smile in his voice, not mocking, but affectionate. He wasn't flustered, which strangely helped me relax. Through the wood of the door, I heard the men chuckling, a warm, rhythmic sound of old friendship. "Tell them to stay." I found myself saying, the words surprising me. "Make some coffee. I'll be out in a minute." When I stepped out of the bathroom moments later, wrapped in my thickest velvet robe, the air in the house felt different. It wasn't just the smell of rain and damp wool coats, it was the vibration of presence. I walked into the living room, drying my hair with a towel. The three men looked up. Arthur, with his wild white beard and joyful eyes, broke into a grin. Silas, always the observer, gave a polite nod, his gaze respectful but attentive. "We really didn't mean to crash your spa day, Elena." Arthur laughed, the sound rumbling pleasantly in his chest. "It's fine," I said, surprised by how steady I felt. "I think I needed waking up." We settled into the seating area. The storm outside had intensified, lashing rain against the glass, which only made the amber glow of the lamps inside feel cozier. Robert poured the coffee, the dark liquid swirling with steam. As we sat, the awkwardness that should have been there simply evaporated. I looked at Arthur, really looked at him, not just as Robert's friend, but as a man with a history written in the lines of his face. And Silas, whose quiet demeanor often made him blend into the background, seemed to have a sharpness in his eyes today, a way of listening that made you feel like every word you spoke was being cataloged and treasured. "You know," Silas said, looking at me over the rim of his mug, "Robert always says you're the anchor of this house. Seeing you today, comfortable in your own space, I get it. There's a peace here." It was a simple compliment, yet it struck a chord. It wasn't about appearance, it was about essence. I felt a warmth bloom in my chest that wasn't from the coffee. Well, someone has to keep Robert from floating away with his crazy ideas, I teased, glancing at my husband. Robert laughed, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "Guilty as charged?" The conversation flowed from there, meandering like a river. We talked about the upcoming fishing trip, but soon the topic drifted to deeper waters. Memories of our youth, the strange passage of time, the dreams we had shelved and the ones we were still chasing. I found myself leading the conversation at points, recounting a story from my 20s that I hadn't thought of in years. It was about a solo trip I'd taken to the coast, a time before I met Robert, where I'd felt wild and independent. Arthur leaned forward, captivated. "I never knew you did that, Elena. That's brave. Most people just talk about adventure, you actually lived it." His eyes held a genuine admiration that made me feel seen, not as a wife, or a mother, or a grandmother, but as Elena, the woman who existed before all those titles and who still existed underneath them. Silas nodded in agreement. "It's funny how we think we know people," he mused. Then one rainy Tuesday, the layers peel back. I looked at the three of them, my husband and his two distinct, wonderful friends. There was no flirtation, nothing inappropriate. It was simply the intimacy of shared humanity, the realization that we were all just souls seeking connection against the backdrop of a stormy night. The rain hammered a steady rhythm on the roof, closing us into a bubble of shared time. I noticed the way Robert watched me as I spoke, a look of renewed pride, as if he was rediscovering me right alongside his friends. It was a subtle shift in the dynamic of our marriage, a reminder that we are never fully known, that there is always more to explore if we are willing to look. "You should come with us next time," Arthur said suddenly. "Not to fish, maybe, but just for the drive. The cabin has a view you'd love." "I might just do that," I replied, and I meant it. The idea of stepping out of my routine, of joining this circle of camaraderie, felt liberating. As the evening wore on, the light in the room grew softer, the shadows longer. We laughed until my sides ached over a story about a disastrous camping trip from the 80s. I felt a sense of belonging that I hadn't realized I was craving. It wasn't that I was lonely, Robert and I were happy, but this was a different frequency of connection. It was the joy of being a protagonist in the room, of holding court in my own robe, stripped of pretense. Eventually, the storm broke, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy and sweet. Arthur and Silas stood to leave, gathering their coats. "Thank you, Elena," Silas said, pausing at the door. This was the highlight of my month. "Truly, mine too," Arthur added, his eyes crinkling. "We won't wait for a tackle emergency to visit next time." "Please don't," I said, smiling warmly. "The door is open." When the latch clicked shut, the house didn't feel empty. It felt resonant, vibrating with the echoes of our laughter. Robert turned to me, his expression soft, full of a quiet emotion I couldn't quite name but understood perfectly. "You were wonderful tonight," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I forgot how much I love hearing you tell those old stories." "I forgot I loved telling them," I admitted, resting my head on his shoulder. We stood there in the quiet living room, the memory of the interruption transforming into something cherished. What had started as a startle in the bath had ended as a celebration of self. I realized then that age doesn't diminish our capacity for surprise or connection. If anything, it deepens it. We become more textured, more interesting. And when we allow ourselves to be seen, truly seen, it is a gift to everyone around us. That ordinary Tuesday didn't just pass by. It marked a turning point. It was a gentle reminder to remain open to the unplanned, to welcome the interruption, and to never forget that even in the quietest moments, life is waiting to surprise us with joy. And as I turned off the lamps and headed to bed, I knew this wasn't just a memory I would keep. It was a feeling I would carry. A quiet, burning ember of confidence and connection that would warm me long after the rain had dried. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video. It helps us bring more of these moments to you. Until next time.